I'm going to be customizing the steering wheel with some forged carbon vinyl that I've never seen anyone do before. If you want to know how to disassemble everything to get to this point, I'm going to have another video explaining how to disassemble the entire thing, which I'll have linked in the description. So you can check that out first to see how to get to this point, and then once you've reached that portion of the video, you can come back here and continue on from where we've left off. First thing we gotta do is clean this up. I'm just gonna be using paper towel and Windex. Make sure it is perfectly clean because we need a very good bonding surface for the vinyl. You can see how much has already come off. So now that this is all nice and clean, I'm gonna clean up the rubber around the edges just so I have a perfectly flat area because some of the flashing from when this was molded is coming through. So I'm just gonna take a razor blade and just kind of cut this off so that way it's a nice clean surface right up against the metal. So now all of the edges are nice and smooth. So now I just have to cut an appropriate size piece of vinyl. The smallest sheet I could get was 4 feet wide by 5 feet long. And this is the forged carbon design that you get. So I'm just gonna kind of roll this out a little bit. So that seems fine. So we can just start making a cut down from here. And it needs to be about this tall. To make my life just a little bit easier because we already have one finished edge, I'm going to start on that one lined up perfectly with the bottom. I'll start from there and work my way up. Start putting it in right about here. Just start pressing it in side to side. Make sure you don't get any bubbles. Staying on the wheel surface, not right in the hole. Now we can start going along the edges. Very lightly working that up to the end. The edge of the razor blade, and I'm just gonna line it right up with the seam between the rubber and the metal. And I'm just gonna make a tiny little relief cut. Now I can do the same on this side here. Peeling this up using the dull end of the razor blade to push it into the corner, and then just cutting right along the seam. Now let's cut the excess off. We can see the crease all the way around the edges. So now for that, because I'm going to be wrapping it around, but I don't want to have so much that I'm going to be covering right back over into the next buttons. I only want to have a tiny bit of overlap. I'm just going to start cutting to only keep a tiny little seam. We can do this inside corner here. And lastly, this one. So we'll get the heat gun, we'll heat all of this up, we'll fold the corners over so that way we get good adhesion all the way around the edges, and then we'll start working on the center holes after. Just put the heat gun on low, and even use just a hairdryer, because we really don't need lots of heat on this. And now we can just start pressing in the edge, get a nice sharp bend. Start from the center, working the vinyl all the way around to the back. I'm hoping that I won't need relief cuts around the edge, just because it'll look a lot cleaner. So I got a couple fingers in here, but I think with some heat and pressure, I'll be able to get that back out. But essentially, that top edge is done. That came out really clean. Again, repeat, heat and stretch. Start from the middle and just work our way around the edges. There we go. That one went perfect. Now we have the nice forged carbon center. We can start heating up and pressing through the centers to make a really good imprint, and then we'll make the relief cuts so we can start stretching the vinyl through. Now for these bigger ones here, because they're so close to the rest of these, I'm gonna have to cut the excess off like I did for the edges. So I'm gonna have to cut a centerpiece so that way I can push this through as well as this one. So we only have a small area that we're actually folding all the way around. So we can just kind of work in a bit of a circle so I can see what I'm working with. And then we can just start cutting a nice edge. Now, if you had like a razor knife, that would be significantly easier, but I'm just trying to show that you can do this with pretty much whatever you have on hand, because you don't need any crazy specialty tools or anything for this. I'm just doing it with a simple box razor. Now for these two holes here, going all the way, and I'm just going to make an X, but without going all the way to the very edge. I still want to leave some of the seam, so that way you won't see the relief. Add some heat, and we can just start folding this through and just stretch, going around in the circle. So we're constantly pushing it out, trying to stretch the vinyl. There we go. Now we'll add a bit more heat here. These center ones don't matter as much because these are just for the screws. We'll just try and get it pressed in really good all around the recessed area for the screw. And then once we have it out, we can just start folding these pieces in. When we take the screws, we can put them through and we'll still have the vinyl going around the edge. So it looks like an actual piece of forged carbon. Now, just to make this a little bit easier, we could even just use a screwdriver and just kind of press it around the edges. Not like it really matters at all because the screws are going to cover this. So now that the 6 mounting holes are done, we can start working on the center piece. So again, we're going to have to cut a relief so that way we only have a small border. More heat! And stretch this all the way through, working slowly. Never try and do the whole thing in one go. Work edge by edge, stretch the vinyl, work it into shape, apply more heat if absolutely necessary, and there we are. We have to do these 4 for the PlayStation buttons, which are going to be the worst ones because we actually have to make sure the center of these is very, very precise because those buttons have to come through it and there's really not a lot of tolerance in there. So now there's 2 things you can do with these ones. You can make a relief hole like we did with these ones, that way we get a perfect edge all the way around, but trying to get in there, like with a screwdriver or something to make that edge is going to be really hard. Or we can make reliefs like we did with this one, which kind of leaves like a junk edge. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to make significantly more relief cuts. And then we can make a relief. And then instead of going straight across, I'm going to make 6. We add some heat. Make sure those are very malleable so we can get it pressed right in. You can see that the reliefs are opening up because it's being stretched around the edges. Now we can take a screwdriver and push it through and use that to stretch. So that way it's round all the way around the center of the hole. So we'll get that going first. Make sure that's good and we're getting some adhesion around the edges, getting it stretched. We can just press down the edges and that will lock it in place so it doesn't peel back up. Just like that. And around to this side and we have a perfect hole. So the buttons will be able to fit because the tolerance is really, really small. And we're adding vinyl, so that's going to increase the thickness, which means that any imperfections, that's going to reduce the tolerance between the actual wheel and the buttons. And then when you push a button in, it's going to stay stuck in. So we have to make sure that is perfect all the way around. Now, once I have them all done, I'm actually going to heat it up again, and I'm just going to go through like that with a screwdriver just to kind of press and force the vinyl around the edges to make sure it's perfectly smooth and as flat as possible. So now I can just repeat for the other 3. So that's the finished wheel. And once it has the screws back in, especially with the ROG logo center cap, I think that is going to be significantly more clean than it was. So now I just have to reassemble the entire thing with the rest of the parts, and we can take a look at how this looks. So I finally got the stickers for the steering wheel. It took 47 days for them to come in. I needed 6mm stickers, and pretty much everything that I found out there is all 8mm at the smallest. The only place I was able to find was out of China off of eBay. They have 6mm stickers and they only came in white. There was no other option anywhere that I could find that had shipping to Canada. So now to label the buttons like I've done right here, all I have to do is open the Windows settings. We're going to go up to search. Just going to type in gamepad and then click on set up USB game controllers. And then we have this window right here that comes up. You can pick the Thrustmaster T300 RS. Now you have to download the driver off of the Thrustmaster website before this will be able to come up. So download the driver first, install it, all that other stuff. But if you've already been using the wheel, then you're already past this step. So we're just going to go to properties. These little buttons right here, these little green boxes, that's what we're looking for. If we look at number 1 right here, that's the shifter. So that one lights up. Number 2, another shifter, 2, then 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 7, 8, 9, 10, and then 11, 12, and 13. So 11 and 12 are these 2 buttons down here, L3 and R3. So if we push L3, that's 11, and then R3 is 12. So now those buttons right there, I need to label. So now we just take our super tiny little labels, some 45-degree tweezers, just take the little 11 sticker, and we're just gonna line it up right on here, so that way it's nice and centered. Now we can do 12, as you can see, lights up 12. Oh, we can just put that one on. Perfectly straight numbered buttons instead of the PlayStation buttons, so that way this can be used on PC. So now in Forza Horizon 5, you can see that it uses the numbered buttons, which is what it would normally be seeing, but because this has PlayStation buttons, we have to kind of decipher what the buttons are going to be. So now we can push 6 to start, because it says 6 and we have the 6 button ready to go. So now all of these buttons are labeled correctly for PCs. So whatever it shows on screen are going to be the numbered buttons that the PC is recognizing. And then we have matching buttons on the wheel itself. Now, there's not really much else I can do here because I don't have the pedals hooked up. I still haven't finished the wiring or anything or painted this rig. Handbrake's still not set up yet. But in terms of the wheel itself, this is done. All of the buttons are now labeled. They all work. I have the vinyl wrap over the center, different sticker on the jewel. Forza Horizon 5, clearly still having crashing issues. That's fun. I wasn't going to play it anyway, but whatever. And then I even painted the little stripe in the center, metallic red, so that way it's more noticeable than that dark blue. And then I also painted the little button box that goes around the back of the wheel with metallic black. However, there's going to be a whole separate video on like the painting process of everything. So I'll get more into depth on how I painted everything. But for this one, the wheel is done. Painted this, labeled the buttons, wrapped the middle, put a new sticker on. Like, I couldn't be more content with it. Everything works. It's no longer loose at all because I tightened all of these. That's the issue that I was having before. So hopefully you found something useful here. You can like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't already. You can join the members program if you want to help support making better videos, or don't do any of it. I'm not telling you what to do.